performed Hajj for my mother since she wasn't able to physically. I just prayed to God that He would grant her paradise. Her aunt, she was in intensive care. And this whole time she was there, I made a CD for her, my voice, about paradise, because she would have never really known or understood that information. It wasn't even available. And so eventually, when I came back from Mecca on my first visit, I had a chance to sit with her, and at that point in time, she could kind of say some words, and she said the Shahada. And when I walked out of the room, she passed away. And we buried her as a Muslim, and the whole family saw that. And after that, I mean, there's been other family members that have accepted Islam. There's been gang members that were enemies of mine from before Islam that have accepted Islam. And now we're brothers. And it's been a blessing.
Yeah. But let me ask you now, among the Hispanic community, I mean, how is the dawah going among them? And are many of them coming to Islam? And what do you find is the attraction of Islam to them?
Yes. I mentioned that in Colombia, I found a way of life that I really loved. And that way of life in Colombia was just based on culture. So we find that the Spanish culture has a lot of similar backgrounds with Islam. And that's from the days in Al-Andalus, right, in Spain. I mean, of course, the Muslims were in Spain for 800 years. And there was, you know, Islam flourished in the fields of science, you know, of algebra and medicine, and many of these works have still been maintained in these different areas of South America and Central America as great works. So I remember my father was mentioning to me when he was growing up, the algebra books that he used to use were from a guy who used to have a long beard and a thobe. And this, he recognized this after becoming Muslim. He said, this is the sort of books that we used to use for geometry, algebra, and much of this. And so knowledge is very strong in Colombia. It's given a lot of value. So when we look at all these different elements, and the Qaylula, of course, back home, there has to be a link that traces all the way back to Islam. People say over there that if you enter a place with your right foot is good luck. Many things from the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam are there, but people have lost the link of where it came from. So when I found Islam, it's as if I attached myself deeper to my culture, which was the original way of life, which was Islam. And so my family recognized that my family values grew stronger, whereas before I was a bit more independent. Like we were raised here, basically. We were very individualistic in the society in America. I became more of a family-oriented individual. And I realized that we had to give time to spending time with my father and my mother. And my mother was just amazed at all this. And so when we talk to the Spanish community, and we talk about all of these principles for Islam, from Islam, there's nothing that goes against their very nature. So in fact, many of the Spanish people, they're just good. They have an inclination to the natural disposition, which is the fitrah. And they realize that Islam is very pure, and they respect it at one stage. The next stage is being inquisitive about where this comes from. And is it just the religion of the Arabs? Or is it only practiced in certain places? When we tell them that it's for everyone, and they start understanding that it's also an option for them, many of them are accepting Islam. Many of them. To the point that in Medina, for example, in Mecca, I've been blessed actually with doing the aqiqah for my first daughter there in Medina. And we gathered all of the students from Latin America and all of the students from America in my aqiqah. And I sat with the brothers from Latin America to hear about their different communities in Venezuela, in Chile, in Mexico, and all these different places. And we realized that Islam is growing greatly in Latin America. Due to the lack of resources, there's not as much material there. And therefore, we started Islam in Spanish as a non-profit organization to make that material. And there's very little material in the realm of the Spanish da'wah. There's very little audio or video, almost none.
But let me ask you, in reference to that, how important is it that you talk to somebody about Islam in their own language?
It's very important. It's very important that we talk to people in their native language. As we know, the sunnah of Allah is to send each messenger from amongst His people speaking in their language to make the message clear for them, so that they know that there's nothing worthy of worship except Allah. And this is in Surah Al-Ibrahim, the 5th verse or so. And so every single messenger was sent and to speak in the language of the people. And what we understand by this is not necessarily to speak Spanish, because we have many brothers here from Palestine and from Egypt that speak Spanish. But the affinity from the heart comes in the style of the language based on the culture. Anyone can learn English living here in America. But the way a Chinese person speaks English or a Nigerian speaks English is not the way a white American or African American would speak English. So it's a very different sense. So we understand that with every culture comes the culture of the people. And so with this, when we speak to the people in the clear manner by which they maybe listen to their family members speaking to them whenever they were babies, and told them about God and all of these things, when we reprogram all of this information in that same language, it's as if we have a very strong pipe of communication going to the heart. And if the person is sincere enough and they're looking for the truth, Allah guides whoever He wills. And alhamdulillah, I've been in situations where I've been in Mexico, for example, and we talked to 200 people, and in one day 3 people accepted Islam. Here in Richardson, Texas, the same thing. 3 people accepted Islam that day. In other situations, some people accept Islam there, and over a period of time we find out that an individual that went there accepted Islam a month later, 2 months later. And so it's amazing to me to see that we're not trying to convince anyone. We're not trying to convert people. We don't have an intention of overtaking people's mentalities or their own convictions. We're only offering some information. And in that sort of offering of information, people find their way to the message somehow. We have a TV show here that we do at 8 o'clock every Sunday, locally on a local channel. And anywhere from 5 to 6 people call within a 30-minute spot. So, I mean, that's every 5 to 6 minutes that a person is calling. And actually this weekend we have a picnic where we invite all of these people. And we just give them a little talk, like 10 minutes, and just let them see the style of living that we have, how we deal with our children, how we deal with our wives, so that we can represent Islam in normality in this playing field, which is America, to let them understand that we're an asset to America instead of a danger or anything to bring actually America to loss. We contribute a lot to society, I think. And the Spanish people here in America, I mean, there's many senators and congressmen already in places, in sitting down and taking decisions for America. I mean, they're already involved. There are many business owners. And the Spanish population is tripling in size, according to the Census Bureau of 2004. I believe the US Census Bureau says that it will triple in size by the year 2050. So we're seeing that the Spanish community is a very strong, vibrant community. They do a lot of the work here in America, as we see in a lot of the highways that are built.
But like you say, Islam is the fitra, and they're hardworking people, and Islam encourages the people to be hardworking, to be family-oriented, and when they hear about Islam, like you say, it's just something which comes naturally to them. But Akhi, Jazakallahu khairan for sharing your story, because mashallah, I find that I talk to a lot of Muslims here in America, and subhanAllah, you know, Allah, He enters everybody's heart a little bit differently, and it's part of our deen that we should know one another, you know, that we should know one another. And I thank you very much for sharing your story with us. But before we conclude, I'd just like to ask you what you feel or see is the future outlook for Islam in America.
With the information age, globally, knowledge has become a key, basically, into all the different sciences in the world, and the internet is giving so much information.